Being 6 o'clock, I'll call the meeting to order. Excuse me, there we go. So I'll call the meeting to order. We roll call, everybody's here, but Bill, he's away to a conference or something, he said. He's away from And approve the agenda, need a motion to approve the agenda. Moved by Jeannie, seconded by Marina, all in favor? It's carried. The minutes of the last meeting from April 25th. Moved by Ron, seconded by Jeannie, all in favor? It's carried. So now we get to the pleasant part of the meeting. We have some presentations to make.
Do you want me to carry something?
I've got it. Let's do it one hand first. We'll get arthritis.
Yes.
So, go ahead and make my glasses. See if I have them all in the right order here. So, I have one here for Ramalda Park. It says many years in the library. I think it's 38, isn't it? Something in that neighborhood. And she's a masterful seamstress, from what they tell me. Just loves to sew.
So for everybody in Lanark.
And a lot of community involvement, and you know, I've known them for a number of years. And it's just a complete pleasure to be able to present this. There's both a certificate, and I'll get them all to come up here in a second, and also there's a plaque. So there's a black spot in here. So get you to come up from Walden, and we'll, if you want to take a picture.
Thank you.
Paper?
Thanks.
Thank you, Sharon. I'd like to thank my nominators, Sharon and Amy and Gracie Turner, and the committee that voted for me, wherever the committee members are, and also the committee, and also the council for these awards.
There. Better than it was.
Great. Thank you.
Thanks a lot. That's it's a real honor to do this.
Thank you.
Now Warren and Gail, I've known them for a while too. And so it's a pleasure to meet new people to the community. And Warren got into it just, I think, shortly after he came here. Came from Boy Scouts and then joined the youth center, spent a lot of years there. Still volunteering back at the youth center right here. And find the paper that somebody wrote for me here. So Warren was the executive director of the youth center for 10 plus years, retired in December 21. His contributions, commitment, and etc. established with this youth center as a model not only for the township but the county and throughout the province. Warren is also our municipal rep for the police service board, volunteer for 2 council terms. He was also a recreation advisory committee member. Gail continues in community involvement as executive director of the Carleton Place Youth Center, formerly director of Big Brothers and Sisters of Lanark County, and that was based in Smith Falls. And above all of these, Warren and Gail sponsored the Ukrainian couple from May 22nd till October They welcomed this couple into their home and were extremely busy ensuring that they were integrated into their new life here in Canada. Over these 6 months, they drove them to appointments, meetings, and all through the couple. And although the couple have now established themselves with jobs and accommodations in the GTA, Warren and Gail also tapped into their group and businesses to assist with their integration. Although they are no longer residing under their roof, they are now lifelong friends. This couple is deserving the Community Spirit Award for Lanark Highlands.
Just like.
One in the middle.
Okay.
Okay, you first.
And Gail's with the,
Thank you.
Perth and District Chamber of Commerce. John.
okay, chamber. I knew it was something. That wasn't business.
Peter,
Yes.
you mentioned that who nominated, it was very poignant.
Yes, Tom Bird.
Oh, okay, perfect.
Tom Bird was
Warren
on.
was here.
Never passing an opportunity to speak, so. Tom Bird, a true gentleman, was the person that nominated Gail and I. And I was proud to call him a friend, and I truly miss him. And I know the people that work with him truly miss him too. So we want to thank him wherever he is. Just an update on the Ukrainian couple. They were a delight to have. We had them for 4 months in our home. We picked them up in Toronto. They wouldn't let us into the airport to go meet them. They had to come out to the parking lot, and I said, no, come on. This was right when COVID was at its height. But I managed to go in and grab them, and we brought them out, and her English was very good. He barely spoke any English. But in the time they were with us, they took lessons. She got a job fairly quickly in IT at a remote location, so she could do it at her house, so which worked perfect. They knew they needed to move to Toronto in order to find other jobs and everything like that, so she continued her job down there. And we're proud of Alex because he just wrote his electrician's ticket. So, and he had to write it in English.
Wow.
So
They've been studying for almost a year, and their 1 year anniversary of being in Canada is May the 18th.
Yeah.
And so they're coming on the long weekend along with our kids, and we're going to celebrate both the birthday and also their first year in Canada. So we're very proud of them.
Yep.
Thank you so much.
Could have moved up a little bit closer to the front. And now we have a delegation from Victoria Gibb Carsley with the Perth and District Community Foundation, Lanark County Vital Signs Report.
That's on?
Yep.
Well, hi, everybody. It is so good to be here. I'm Victoria DeCarsley. My parents may have taught some of you at the Perth Collegiate years ago. They taught there for 35 years, so John and Natalie. I grew up in Perth and came back here about a year and a half ago after about 30 years away. And I'm so glad to be back in the area and working as Executive Director of the Perth Community Foundation. So I'm here to present the Vital Signs Report, which not all of you got, but you can download it on our website. I did give it to the counselors. And it basically is a snapshot of the health of Lanark County. And the Perth and District Community Foundation, we have a smaller catchment area than Lanark County. Ours is Perth, Lanark Highlands, Tay Valley Township, and Drummond North Helmsley Township. But for this report's purposes, because we're the only community foundation in the neighborhood, we took in all of Lanark County. So I'm just going to talk a little bit about the highlights of the report, and then I can answer any questions that people have. So I think you had in your package, we don't have the PowerPoint, but we've got the PowerPoint slides in your package. This is like a really long, Microphone, can I do this and not break anybody's ears? My glasses on. All right. So just to say a little bit about the Perth District Community Foundation. So I don't, how many, show of hands, how many people have heard of the foundation? A few? Okay, one of my jobs as executive director is to start building the knowledge of the foundation and building its profile a little bit, because it has been around since 2002. And this past year we gave out $122,000 in grants, including to Plan B and Connect Well and to the library upstairs. The display of books up there was part of a grant that we gave. And we get money from the community through donations and bequests, and we invest it in the market, which was kind of this past year, but we invested in the market and used basically the interest on the money in the market to then grant out to the community to try and make the community stronger and better and a place where everybody feels like they belong. And so that's sort of what we exist to do. And the reason that we invest the money and only use the interest on it is so that the funding can go on and on and on in perpetuity. That's sort of the idea behind the foundation. If you do want to find out more, you can go to our website. We have a newsletter you can sign up for. We have an annual report there along the website, that sort of thing. So in terms of what Vital Signs is, it is basically a community checkup. The last one we did was in 2017. And these Vital Signs reports started with the Toronto Community Foundation, but now they're actually done by community foundations across the country, as well as in different parts of the world now. The idea has sort of really caught on. And the idea is to sort of take a snapshot, and it's for decision makers like all of you, it's for community members, it's for community organizations, to get a sense of what's going on in the community. And basically what we do is we take census data from the census, and we also do community conversations, and we had about 30 community organizations come together in last summer to talk about what the key issues were. And then we used research that's done in the county. So Planet Youth, some of you may have heard of, we did use some of their studies, the Table, Connect Well, others who had done studies in their own community with their organizations. We use their data as well to kind of get a picture of what's going on. And so what we basically found in the report was that really, especially during the pandemic, of course this is just after the pandemic, is that there was a real spirit of collaboration in all of the county. And around the different themes we looked at, and I'll tell you what those were, we saw that there was a real interconnection of all the different themes. So the themes we looked at were housing, wealth and income gaps, health and well-being, children and youth, people at work, belonging, leadership and civic engagement, transportation, environment and nature, arts and culture, and safety. So those are sort of the big items that sort of emerged as we looked at the data that we thought were important in the county. And as I say, all of them really intersect and overlap, and I'll talk a little bit about that when I'm talking about the different points in the report. Okay, I covered already where the information comes from. So basically what we found is, not surprisingly, the county is growing and it is changing. So there's been a lot of influxes, especially in places like Carleton Place, where you see a lot of people coming into the county. So it's grown a lot more than the rest of Ontario, like 10% more than the rest of Ontario. And the population is aging, which also isn't surprising because this is a very attractive place for retirees or people like me who are heading towards retirement fairly soon. Those who are moving in are also, though, there are younger people moving in with families because of the affordability of housing, or the relative affordability of housing, and they tend to be more diverse in terms of their backgrounds. So in terms of the things we focused on, one of the most urgent pieces that we focused on is housing. And again, that's probably no surprise to any of you. There's a real crisis in housing in Lanark County, in Perth, and you know, in the townships as well. And the problem is that when people don't have housing, sort of everything else crumbles, right? So when they don't have adequate housing, it's very hard to just sort of get along in any other areas like employment and health and all of those things. And so right now, there's a wait list for community housing for 6 to 8 years. And some of you may have heard that there was a fire in the Harvey Street housings, and I just actually drove up to McDonald's Corners today to pick up somebody who's living with us now, because she was without a home and she can't drive. And so she was living up here at McDonald's Corners, and it wasn't any good for her, she couldn't drive, and so she's now living with us, and there are 30 households are now out of a place to live in that Harvey Street situation, and some of them will be out for as long as a year because of the fire. And so that has really exacerbated an already difficult problem. That being said, there's a lot of action being taken on by citizens. So there are things like the BLA, the Building Lanark County Affordable Housing Group out of the table. There's one that started with the Anglican Church but has now moved sort of more into the community, called the Caring Housing Initiative in Perth. And there's a co-op that maybe people are going to start looking at building that would make affordable units for folks. And so there are things happening, but really it is an urgent issue. And certainly the Lanark County has taken a lot of initiative to build more units, and in terms of the different municipalities, so that's a very good thing. But there's a long way to go still. Another piece we looked at was wealth and income gaps. So not surprisingly, the pandemic had a big impact on income because a lot of people lost their jobs. We weren't as bad as in other parts of Ontario, but what we did notice in the data is that men out-earn women. If they're both working full-time, they tend to out-earn women by about $10,000 a year. So that gap between men and women still exists in terms of income. And another issue is that women often, especially during the pandemic, left the workforce to care for children or for elderly parents or whatever, and so they lost income that way. So there was a bit of a disparity there. One thing I found interesting was that Perth and Smith Falls are the two communities in the county that have the highest percentage of people, of households that bring in less than $40,000 a year. And so Beckwith is the highest income, and Perth and Smith Falls the lowest. A strong message came out about the need for a universal basic income. The living wage in Lanark County, I think, is $19.05 an hour. And of course, minimum wage is 15 something or other. So there's basically the living wage is the idea is that it's what you need just to cover the basics: housing, food, transportation, that kind of thing. And so there is real movement out there to try and figure out a living wage or universal basic income for folks. And there's an event at the United Church in Perth on the 16th, if anybody's interested, next Tuesday night, actually, today. In terms of people at work, employment was generally strong here in Lanark County. One of the things that was misleading is there are a lot of retirees in the county, and especially in this area. So there is an area though where there's a real shortage, and that is in the caring professions. So child care, home care, health care, long-term care. There's a real lack of people able to do those jobs, and as we know during the pandemic, a lot of people who were doing that kind of work kind of burnt out because it was so difficult. So that's a bit of a problem. The other thing is we have Algonquin College in Perth, but there's no place for the students to live that's affordable. So that's where one of those intersections happens without affordable housing. It's hard to attract people to come to Algonquin College who then might stay in the community and work. So that's a bit an issue for sure. Moving right along to belonging, leadership, and engagement. There are a lot of people who volunteered during the pandemic, but volunteerism understandably is down because of that. Of the pandemic, a lot of people just, wasn't safe to go out and to volunteer. What we see now, though, is that there are people who are starting to re-engage. I facilitated a conversation about hospice care a few weeks ago. I think it was in the Lanark era, the story, and there were over 80 people there. And one of the main reasons to hold the meeting was to find volunteers to get involved with that, with a new organization called the Hospice Hub, and there were a lot of people who came out. So that was very encouraging to see that. And organizations like the Community Action for Refugee Resettlement, CAR 2, which brought Afghani refugees to Perth recently, they've had a lot of people volunteering with that as well. Another thing is environment, obviously, that's a big issue for people. The climate crisis is real. We see that with the weather. I don't know about you, but my basement has been flooded. Well, it's just dried up, but it was flooded like for 2 weeks, like 3 inches of water. I live in an old house, but it just kept coming in. And we're seeing the effects of climate change on the day-to-day weather now. And so there is a need for that to be addressed. The Lanark County has set a corporate emissions reduction target of 20%, which is a good thing. There are now electric vehicle charging stations across Lanark County. So one of the things is that transportation, of course, I think Lanark County had 3 vehicles per person, and that includes babies. Like, we have a lot of cars in that, and understandably, right? Like, we have to get across this vast area. But things like, I had a call the other day from Barbara Young, who I think you may have been speaking to, with Highland North Network. They're looking at getting a car sharing or a ride sharing program going to the different community centers. So things like that are innovative, that can move people around but not mean that everybody needs to have a car, are a good thing to be developed. Arts and culture were really, really important, and what we found was during the pandemic, libraries were super important. It was a place that people could, get books, feel like, they were connected, that sort of thing. And it was my first visit up to the library just now before the meeting, and I was so impressed with it as a library, and seeing a lot of people in there was really kind of neat day night. So arts and culture are always important. Obviously, Lanark County has amazing music and theater and festivals and all that kind of stuff. And that is something that really brings people together and helps them feel connected in community. The last thing I want to talk about, I think, is, safety. So really, there are 2 things that came out of the report. One was the domestic violence. As we know, I think is it Lanark County or Renfrew County, I'm not sure, but femicide has been declared a problem, the murder of women and domestic violence. And so Lanark County Interval House is doing a really good job on something called the See It, Name It, Change It campaign, which is encouraging people to actually speak out about domestic violence if they see it. The other issue is safety on the roads. And again, people drive, youngsters drive. I remember when I was growing up in high school, I had several friends who actually died on the roads here. And that happens, and so we really have to work to educate this particular area, young people, about safe driving and not driving when they're intoxicated and that sort of thing. So that was another issue. So, I talk really fast, I hope people follow me, but I know that you have lots of things to talk about tonight. Affordable housing, really important. Community transportation, really important. Basic income. Mental health supports. The pandemic was hard on mental health, we all know that. Accessible childcare. Support, we want to support community-based solutions, because a lot of community-based solutions are great. Like, I've visited Plan B, and they do some really amazing things there in that house, right, in terms of building community. Supporting access to the arts and culture, especially in rural areas, and then partnering with community organizations are another good thing to do for councils. So that is it. Like I said, I know you have a really full agenda. I want to thank our partners in this, ConnectWell, Crimson District Library, and the Community Plan for Safety and Wellbeing. And I'm happy to answer any questions, and feel free to go to our website or email me at info@pdcf.ca. Did I take a breath? I don't think so.
So a couple things, there is an open house on, the 23rd at 2 o'clock in the afternoon for a new build at 188 Chamber Street in Smith Falls. It's accessible, it's a 6-unit. Carebridge is building another in Smith Falls and Chamber Street. I'm not exactly sure when it's gonna be ready, probably next spring, I would think, it's 30-some units, I believe. So that's one of the things we're doing with Interval House. This year's Warden's Banquet, Interval House is gonna be the charity of choice.
Oh, wonderful, oh, that's fantastic.
And, the whole thing with the see the name and change it, that came out of the inquest of the 3 murdered women in Renfrew, and Lanark County was the first one to pass the first resolution out of 50-some, I think it is, altogether, and that was to declare, intimate partner violence to be epidemic. And it's been following across the province. That's another thing, we wanna kinda kick that program ahead.
Yeah, well, thank you for that, I didn't realize that Lanark County was the first to do it.
Well, we were
That's
kind of
wonderful.
waiting because it had just come down that day, and Erin, if it wasn't for her, a lot of those wouldn't have been done.
Yeah,
She was the big push in that inquest,
Yeah,
and,
yeah, we fund them too, by the way, Lanark County
Yeah.
does.
yeah, cause, that was a question we kinda hummed and hawed, do we pass it that night? And I think it was going the next night or so to Renfrew, so why would we wait?
Yeah, that's really great, good. All right,
Thanks a lot.
you are welcome, thank you very much for having me. I may stick around a bit here. Thanks.
So the next we have, there's 3 communications, anybody wanna pull that one to speak on? One is the, report from the library. Pretty implicit. So motion to pass the communications. Jeannie and Marina, all in favor? Carried. Then we're down to reports, community service, community center, and museum users agreements, renewal. Chelsea?
Oh, I left my microphone on,
This is that. Should be
Yeah,
on.
it just worked.
I got it.
No.
Yep, special button.
I'm on it. So this is a report about the community center, the 8 community centers and 2 museums. So we have been in a 10-year agreement with them, and they're expiring all around this time now. They all kind of expired at different times, so one of my goals for this was to get them all set on the same date, to expire on the same date. And I have been, each community center and museum, I've been in communication with them about this. We've been working together to kind of come to an agreement. This is still a working document, so I can take any notes tonight and make any changes. The 2 major changes to the agreement that I'm gonna highlight is the yard and winter maintenance. So what I kind of did in my report was I made up a table outlining the winter and summer maintenance and whose responsibility was who. That has been one thing since I've started here that has been kind of ongoing back and forth. A lot of the times it's just a verbal thing. We ended up doing it somehow, then we kept doing it, that sort of thing. So what I'm kind of hoping for is just to be a little bit more transparent with these new agreements. And if council agrees, to either have all of the community centers do their yard and their own winter maintenance with the exception of a few. And that is specified in the agreements, and then from here on out, we'll proceed with that. A couple of the community centers and museums, so like Mira, for instance, is beside the McDonald's Corners Public Works Yard. So they just end up doing it when they plow their own parking lot. So I don't know how we want to word it with that one. I don't think the Public Works Department minds doing it. And if they ever run into a problem with not doing it before like a big event or something, they're normally able to communicate it to us and we can get it done for them. Same with the Robertson Lake Hall. So they have a contractor that's doing it, we pay the bill, and they go under our insurance every year. Kind of what I was negotiating with them, their standpoint was, well, the boat launch on the beach is your responsibility, however, in the winter, no one's really using the boat launch on the beach, they're mainly going there to use the hall. So that's another one that we kind of need to discuss. And And then for the detailed building maintenance responsibilities, so this is something that, the 4 years I've been here, I wish that we had, just because I do get calls from community centers and museums, and they're like, is that you, is that me? The old agreements only said major maintenance was the township and minor, but it didn't give exactly what that was, so I've kind of been envisioning this, knowing that the agreements were expiring soon, and we've been working on it together. So far, most of the halls do agree with it. You'll notice I did attach the draft agreements and made little notes. Some of the halls don't have ducts, some of them do, so that kind of thing, they'll be customized. Some of them have some pumps, some of them don't, that sort of thing, but they're all very similar. With the exception of, so like Hopetown has ball diamond, so I added that in there, that the Hopetown Hall, community center is responsible for their ball diamond maintenance. Same with the Robertson Lake Hall, they have a pickleball court, so I wrote that in there, they'll be responsible for the pickleball court. So each hall is very different, it's ran very different, the agreements are pretty similar with the exception of a few, little details. I hope council was able to go through them and kind of read those notes. And then for the Robertson Lake Hall, I did send an email around after this agenda had come out, specifying, so I did notice 2 errors. I just had the wrong hall listed, so I changed that. And then the summer maintenance chart, so what we're proposing for them is they continue with the grass cutting and the weed whacking. They remove and store picnic tables each year. We're responsible for tree removal, safety, boat launch maintenance, which we've been doing anyways. Bathroom maintenance, that wasn't listed anywhere in the old agreement, so that's also been kind of like a who wants it. And same with change room maintenance. And that way that's listed in there and there's no kind of guessing. For the financial implications, so we do budget $30,000 annually for the maintenance of those halls and the 2 museums. And then each community center gets an annual grant of around $1,500, and each museum gets a grant of around $5,000 each year. So yeah, I'm just kind of wanting to get any feedback, any notes, that sort of thing right now, and then this will come to council in 2 weeks to hopefully get those passed. But I'll do a report for the next council meeting with all these agreements attached and then the changes that council wanted to see made, and then we can pass it by bylaw as well. So just looking for questions, that sort of thing right now.
Jeannie?
That was a lot to read, and I did go through it. So I'll just go to the detailed maintenance responsibilities. So you've got that it would be the community centers or the museum's responsibility for roof repair, shingles, soffits, fascia. If we're going to be responsible for the roof, to my way of thinking, that's part of the roof, because you can't have one without the other. So I think that should be considered on our side. Going down to exit signs again, there's that, as well as the fire extinguishers, monthly inspections. That's part and parcel of safety, and I think that should also be the township's responsibility through like our fire department. So I'm seeing the fire chief shaking his head, but I'm just thinking, if you didn't have those, they're required, right? So if they're going to be our buildings, I think we should be responsible for providing those. Sump pump maintenance, that's another tricky one too. Again, because some places probably utilize it, like I'm speaking now primarily in the museum, that sump pump runs constantly in the spring, and when we get heavy rain, and of course, a lot of that is, part and parcel of that is because of the water issue, but that runs nonstop, whereas you might have another one that doesn't. So it's more likely that that pump's gonna burn out or something's gonna go wrong with it. So I think that's a kind of an anomaly. I don't know the other halls and whether they have sump pumps, but I thought that was something that maybe we should look at. And the last one was, you talked about washroom facilities. So a lot of the halls now and the parks are going to the porta potties rather than buildings like we have down in the park in Lanark. So I don't know whether that's covered under the contract for supplying, if there were any issues. And what drew my attention to this was up at, the head of Stump Lake, where the works used to be responsible. They used to take care of the outhouse and buy the materials and, you know, have it, put the ash in and the bio or whatever. And now we have a porta potty. It's really been well received. It's clean. People come, a lot of people access the lake there, and unfortunately, some of them still clean their fish there. And they used to throw that into they're not doing that anymore in the porta potty. So, I'm not sure if we gotta have them. That was just my comments on the overall. It was a lot of information to take in, and again, I'm not familiar with all the halls, so maybe some of this is irrelevant.
Gene, you have something to say about the? No, I just want to clarify, Councilor Russell, was that fire department presently doesn't do any inspections. They do their own inspections on their extinguisher. It's basically check the gauge to see that it's full.
Okay.
They sign their name, and then once a year, we'll get the company to come in and they do a annual maintenance. So right now, presently, the fire service doesn't look after the fire extinguishers. Just so you know.
I didn't know.
No, that's fine. I'm just clarifying. That's why I was shaking my head.
Okay.
I was thinking that we didn't do it, that's all.
Okay.
Ron?
Thank you. Through the chair, Chelsea, you said you spoke to all the groups, all the user groups, the heads of those groups. Did you get any pushback, or is there any issues that they were in agreement with the things that were laid out as they are now?
Generally speaking, the feedback was actually really positive, just because they also were very excited to see a chart like this, so it does take a lot of the guessing out for it. They're like, this is great. There was some pushback on, I think, the roof repairs. I did hear from a few. I tried to make notes like Paul doesn't agree with this one kind of thing. There wasn't too many, but yeah, I think the roof was one of them. The foundation parging for one of the halls. The fire extinguisher, so we will be still responsible for replacing those, and like Jean said, we pay for a company that's certified to come and check them annually. So what we've been doing is monthly. So one of our staff members has to go to every single place monthly to check them, rewrite it out. So we were just gonna do a little training session with them, show them how to check it, because you're essentially just checking to make sure it's still intact, give it a little shake, that sort of thing. So we're just trying to streamline it so that staff time is being better used versus driving all around the township every month to check the fire extinguisher. So that was my idea behind it, but we'll still be replacing it and we'll still be paying for that annual inspection. That's really the big ticket item there. But yeah, other than that, some of the pushback for the grass cutting and the plowing, depending on if we had been doing it, then obviously they want us to keep doing it. So that's just something that council needs to think about. I'm okay with continuing on how we have been doing it. I think a lot of it was just that's how it's always been, so then that's kind of what got right into the agreement sort of thing. But I do know that most of the halls do their own, so, yeah.
Yeah, and I like the fact that it's spelled out black and white, because that is the issue. This is the issue when you get turnover staff and you get people, oh, that's the way it's always been done, but then somebody says, no, it's not. Well, now it's done black and white. It's right there. This is the responsibility. This is our responsibility. This is your responsibility. And we go from there. The other question I have is on phones, because a lot of these buildings have phones. I know for some reason they think we need a landline phone, and I have no clue why. I would hazard a guess they've probably never been used. We pay $400 a year for a landline phone. And we're in the age of cell phones. Everybody's in that building. Somebody has a cell phone. So if there's an issue, somebody has a phone. To use the phone. So I'm not sure if we can make the phones without save some money. We can put it towards something else. And I have no idea what we're paying on else. So
I would think some of them,
Some of them have no cell contact, I don't think Robert's Lake has any cell contact, so that should be fixed eventually. But, Steve?
Thank you, Chair. That was a very comprehensive report, Kelsey. Thank you. There's a lot of work in there, and I'm sure most of the halls appreciate the formality that has come of it. I spoke to you about a couple of items there. One of them was just inconsistency on a legal wording. Some of them were having side note that we're taking it out, it was not legal for one, it was just something that needed to be through the mall. And then an idea on the snow plowing, when we do, when our public works does things, we have a valuation put on that, and then just like an equalization payment paid to halls that are doing their own, so that it's a level playing field. Because it is not a not worth anything service, for sure. I know ratepayers in Lanark Highlands pay a lot of money for snow plowing and other things, firewalls and things, and it's certainly gonna be becoming more and more of an issue with climate change, working conventions and stuff, some of these big snowfalls, where we have massive amounts of snow removed, and where the snow is being put. So that would be one way of, putting a value on our public works operations, and then adjusting the $1,560 to reflect that for the other halls that are doing themselves. And then the other thing that I had was, are all of our buildings considered to be emergency use buildings as well, or some of them are and some of them aren't?
So I'll answer your last question, since the first time I met. So no, they're not all, emergency shelters. So, some of them have washrooms with showers in them, and those are kind of classified higher up in the emergency shelter list, because people can have showers there, etc. That's why a lot of them have phones still, is because of that. But yeah, no, not all of them. It's more specifically like geographical based, right, to make it make sense, because they are, some are really close together, right? So no, they're not all emergency shelters. I can get that information to council though, if that's something that they're interested in seeing. We just have to build a list. And then the, talk about snow plowing and getting a monetary value on that. So we could do something similar with our grass cutting. So we passed grass cutting rates because some of the halls were struggling to find people to be able to cut the grass there at a decent price. So we passed it through council that, we can charge them, I think it's $20 an hour, and we go and we cut the grass and we do back for them. So we could do maybe something similar even for snow plowing, and then we invoice the community centers, I think it's biannually, because a lot of their heat payments and hydro, et cetera, comes through us, so we could just add that on to those invoices too, kind of thing. So we're not leaving them high and dry with getting the work done. We'll still have someone that can do it, and we can come up with some sort of value.
Okay, thank you for that. So, that would be good, especially the snow plowing. It's not so much the snow plowing, the slip and fall and the stuff. We cover those buildings with our insurance. So, maybe a standard policy for looking after that, so that the insurance coverage is reasonable if there's ever an issue. And then on the emergency shelters, is there any kind of special or different policy that would be required for any kind of maintenance on those?
I don't believe so, no.
So it's just deemed, the building would just be deemed an emergency shelter, there's no real extra maintenance required to be used. Thank you.
That is why I put into the winter maintenance, because that is something that we experience throughout the winter a lot. If the halls aren't being used for an extended period of time, the entrances and exits get full of snow, so some of those buildings, they need to be clear at all times, right? Just in case. So that is why I added that on there. Same with like the propane tanks and stuff for contractors, so contractors can get in.
Anything else? Marina?
Thank you. I had one question. You're saying the $20 an hour for grass cutting. Do we currently have an agreement with any of the community centers to do that? I just didn't see it reflected.
Yes, so, we do the Watson's Corners, so we invoice them to cut their grass, and Robert's Lake.
Okay, thank you. I liked, Councilor Roberts' suggestion, of coming up with a price in lieu. I think that that's fair. I can understand that, there may be some frustration and some feelings of inequality, as far as the yard and winter maintenance, so I think that that would be good to look into. I had a question regarding, and I'm not sure if anyone else on council feels the same way, the 10-year agreement. We're coming to a conversation next regarding, a lack of maintenance on these buildings to no fault of anyone here at the table. We have lots of work to do. So I just wonder if 10 years is a long time when we need to have some serious conversations about every one of these buildings. So that was my main comment.
Allison?
Thank you, Chair. So one of my things was the fire extinguishers as well. I think that it's reasonable to ask everybody to do their own monthly inspection. But can we just, include in the wording that the annual will still be completed by the township? The phones, I was actually gonna say something similar, is that if some of them are used as a emergency center, we would need to probably keep those phones. And I like the equalization payment as well. I think one of the items that, I have a couple just small admin things that I'll send to you, Chelsea. So I think the biggest thing for us was one of the things for the payments for the grants to the locations. So the museums have actually included a minimum amount in the agreements, this go around. Could we also maybe stipulate that it's paid by March 31st in the event that we don't get to budget? If we're gonna have an agreement that we're giving a minimum of that amount, it would be nice for these groups to have those funds, because some of them need them to open up, and get things going before, we get to budget sometimes. So, that's one. And then our other comment was on the tendering process, where it said that we should attempt to utilize people or companies local. It's just against the Discriminatory Business Practices Act of Ontario to actually put that into an agreement. So that's the only reason that we asked for that to just be removed. Other than that, as Chelsea said, she did work with the groups, and we got, as far as the boards, they got to put in input and feedback and things like that, so I appreciate your work. Thanks, Chelsea.
That's it from everybody? Yeah, okay, go ahead, Chelsea.
Yeah, so for the tendering process, so, what, Councilor Reagan's talking about is, so if you go to the agreements, it's under the tendering process, and this is under the community centers and museums. So what it says in the old agreements is that they shall attempt to utilize people or companies located in the township of Lanark Highlands, to as great an extent as possible, should be based on competitive tendering quotation process. So I think we should just take that out completely. We don't do that in our own procurement policy anyways, which is the policy that they need to follow anyways as well. Most of the time, going back to the minor major stuff, a lot of the work that they're gonna be doing anyways falls under that $5,000 mark, so that's mostly pertaining to us as the tendering process, which obviously we would follow the procurement policy. So if council's in agreement, I can just take that clause out of the tendering process completely. And then we're not saying anything we shouldn't be.
So that won't be a change in the motion as reissued?
No, this is just notes right now.
Yeah, so the final will come out at the next council meeting. So I have a motion that council approve the recommended user agreements for the community centers and museums for another 10-year term, and that the appropriate bylaw be brought forth to May 23rd, 2023 council meeting. You have Rupert Secretary, Katie, and Allison. Any further discussion? Ron's ready to vote, all in favor? And the museum repair, Chelsea.
Yeah, so, we had a pretty lengthy discussion the last, committee of the whole meeting. This was supposed to come back at the budget meeting on the 1st, but unfortunately that meeting got canceled, so here we are. But it did give you a bit of time to get a little bit more information and stuff, so it kind of worked in my favor. So pretty much what I did for this report is I just broke out, because the motion was quite long, and I just kind of broke it out into action items. So the background, I just listed the 5 different action items that council kind of put into that motion. And then in the discussion, I put where we were at with those action items. I won't go through each one, but, as long as council's had a chance to kind of go through everything, I think I was able to touch on everything that they were looking for. The only thing we're still waiting on is just the legal, on the land ownership, etc. But I have included in my motion, that council direct staff to bring back a report containing that information, and we can kind of go from there if we decide we want to do a survey on the land, and if we want to kind of proceed with getting that all into our name, the costs and et cetera. So I think that one's kind of deferred for now, through my motion, but the rest of the stuff I think is all there. Yeah, so let's start.
Jeannie?
Okay, so, public doesn't have this, but I asked Chelsea, to circulate to the members, pictures of the museum. So there's a before and after of what the museum looked like before it was stripped down to the concrete walls to show the damage. I think it's important, because not all council members have been in the museum to see it. It's quite dramatic. That work was undertaken because it was passed that we were going to move forward with the repairs. And that had to be done so that Norwood could see to what extent the condition of the walls were. It's a good thing that they did that, because a lot more damage was uncovered in the process of doing that. But if you, and I'm sorry for the public not seeing it, but I can pass this around if you want to have a look at it. You can just see there's, in good faith, the museum members as well as staff worked to get this ready so that Norwood could go in and do what they needed to do. And now we're at a stage where we're thinking, well, maybe we won't do it, maybe we'll do it. I think that's a little unfair to put that onto the museum. I think they kind of felt like they did everything they were asked to do. And again, the responsibility of the building is for the township, not the volunteers. So, in the lady that did the Vital Spark sign, she touched on it, and I thought it kind of resonated with me that culture is a big, important part of community, and the museum is a big part of our culture. It's recorded history. I know the people that fought really hard 40 years ago to get that museum even open. The work that went into it. We've got a really small but dedicated group of volunteers currently in place. And I think I've touched on this before. They worked extraordinarily hard in the last 3 years through COVID to fundraise, because they realized that the museum has been neglected for a lot of years. And now now we're seeing this is a result of what happens when you ignore a building. Now, looking at Chelsea's numbers, there are things on here that don't have to be done immediately. So we've got until 2025 to make it washroom accessible or ramp accessible to get in. So we have a bit of time there. Upstairs lighting, we have lighting, so I mean we can, if push comes to shove, we can make do with the lighting that's in the building. Yes, it would be nice to have, bright lighting and spotlights, whatever, but that's not necessary. What is necessary is to do the repairs to the foundation that was agreed upon. The roof has to be done. It was recognized even before the foundation issue came to light, that roof was ready to be replaced, and it was put off, and I think another roof got done, so that has to be done, but that would have been done anyway. So when you look at this number that Chelsea's got in your report, 210,000, you go, oh my God, that's crazy. But if you break it down to the things that actually have to be done, the wall, the roof, I'm not sure whether the eavesdrop can be recycled. The majority of the things that have to be done, I think it worked out to be, I thought I had it calculated, but I don't. It's a lot less than 210,000. And going forward, we're going to have that fulsome discussion, and I think it is important to find out on the title or the possibility of purchasing the land beside the museum to make it a viable, so that there is room to put in a ramp, or there is room to utilize that. We use that space currently, even though it doesn't belong to us. The homeowner's been very gracious and let us have yard sales, or we were thinking that'd be a great spot for tea parties or whatever. So if we could acquire that land down the road, great, but just to get the museum open and functioning, we have to go ahead with the basic repairs that we had agreed to originally, which is the foundation, to stop the leaking, stop the water going in, because that's degrading our artifacts that are in the building. So I'm definitely in favor of doing the repairs that we had agreed to, and by ripping this wall out, Norman now knows what needs to be done to finish, and that was the second part of your report that you came back asking for extra funds. I think it was 37, or what was the amount? 37. I think though that work should be done, and then at that point, we've got a secure building that's not leaking in water, degrading anymore, and then we have that wholesome discussion about going forward. I think Ron spoke to it too. We have a lot of buildings that we've got so many assets here. We need to have a frank discussion of what we want, what we don't want, what we're willing to invest in. But I think the museum is definitely worth investing in. So, thank you.
Thank you. I had many discussions this week by many lovely board members on the museum. I was grateful to talk to all of them. I appreciate all of their work. They're lovely, lovely, lovely individuals that are hardworking to keep this going in our township. I had two questions through the chair to Chelsea. One part of the motion was asking Norwoods exactly, in his opinion, what needed to be done in order to get them through this season. Was that question answered?
So the action item number 1, I had to determine the correct cost. I don't recall that part being in the motion, but maybe I read it wrong.
So we had said to discuss with them what their work was to date and what the cost would be.
Yep.
And then if we were not going to go forward with the entire bit, what needed to be done to mitigate any more damage in order for them to open this season?
Yeah,
Did that conversation happen or no?
Well, I think even prior to that, we had been having that conversation when we were going into all of this cost discussion. So no, I didn't include that in my reports. I'm sorry, I must have missed that part. But we had discussed that with him before, and he essentially said, like, yes, we can go up forward with the original proposed project. That should suffice. You're getting most of the work done, but it's not completely getting done.
Okay. I guess where I stand on this, and I'm feeling frustrated, so I can only imagine what the board members are feeling. We had gone into an agreement with this company over a year ago, and the work hasn't been started. I don't see any materials in the yard, so if they're inside, then correct me if I'm wrong. But I don't understand how we are legally binded to this person if he hasn't started what he said. And I'm confused here with if we canceled the contract today, we would be responsible for the entire sum or half. Can you clarify that?
Yeah. So that was, after I discussed it with the contractor, that's what he said to me. So those aren't my words, sorry, I should have clarified. But I asked for an itemized list of like, work you've been done, the labor costs, and then as well as the supplies, and that's all that I got back from him, was just essentially, that if we were to cancel the contract, what he said, either the entire contract sum would be owed or half. He said he'd be willing to work with the contract, with the township. And then he put that they have spent a lot of time on the project to date and have it in their schedule to do right away with the materials already in. And I think he meant his yard, not the.
Okay, fair enough, thank you. My stance right now is I absolutely want the museum to continue in Lanark Village. I absolutely want all of our heritage to be preserved. I do not think that we should be putting money into this building, any money into this building, until we have the legal information, until we have a wholesome discussion of where we are moving forward with all of our laws.
So,
I would vote no tonight.
Allison?
Thank you, Chair. So Chelsea, I know I did reach out to you earlier, and I, we had a discussion about, the contract, that there technically isn't a written contract with Norwood. And the tender never did specify when the work was to be completed. It was of the essence, which means as soon as possible. So, kind of some similar statements to that. The only thing I'm going to kind of disagree with Councillor Kelso on is, I think that some of these are pretty important, because I know Councillor Kelso mentioned that the roof was leaking, which is also causing water into the building. So even if we fix the foundation, we still have water coming in. The remediation of the mold in the building, is that included in this cost as well?
so most of the mold was in that wood paneling, and it's been totally scrapped, yeah.
So it was remediated by an actual company that deals with mold removal?
No, no.
Okay, so my other question is there mold on the artifacts? Not that that's the township, I'm just worried about, all the things that are in the building itself. And what grants have we currently applied for to do some of these works?
So I myself haven't applied for any grants for this project. I have been looking along with the museum board as well, but none have been applied for as of today.
Rod?
I understand it's pretty complex. I think we're gonna find when we do the search, that I don't even know if there's any relatives left with the original person that owned this. So I think that this is hard to go back to the state, there's no state for it to go back to. I think it's gonna be part of the municipality's building. And as long as we keep a museum, it's ours. So we have no intention of trying to close the museum, it's always gonna be open. I understand the thought process of trying to look for an alternate site, but I know that the museum board had discussed that before, and they weren't in favor of that, but I understand why some of the council, and myself, were entertaining that idea. We've also passed this in a previous budget, and passed by a different council, that's already been passed, we have not carried out the work yet, so it's already budgeted for. I'm in favor of the motion as it is, utilizing the money from the water and sewer reserve, with that knowledge that even though the money was used for the sale of the PUC, which was $600,000, that money was to be spent in Lanark Village. This is a Lanark Village project. Even though it's Lanark Highlands, it's in the village. The money was spent on money was spent on the study that went into water. The money that went into the study should have come out of the water and sewer reserve fund. No, that was what it was earmarked for. Not the money from the sale of PUC. That money from the sale of PUC should have went back to the village. So I'm in favor of utilizing that. And we definitely have to have a wholesome discussion. I just don't understand when I hear people thinking that we pay the highest taxes for them, which we don't, but it's impossible if we don't. We have the most to look after, probably of almost any small municipality in Ontario. You're looking at 10 buildings right here that we've outlined. That's not even half of the buildings that we own that we have to look after. And then throw in bridges and throw in roads. We've got an amazing amount of infrastructure and this stuff that we need to look after, and to try and do that with a low tax rate, I don't know how it's possible. But I do, because we've been lying to ourselves for years and not fixing these things when the issue come up. Probably when we built this building, instead of doing it the right way, we just rushed and did something and let's put something out. Well, it's not withstanding the test of time. I remember when the building was built, and if it probably was done right, we wouldn't be having this issue right now. We can't have a museum that has water issues. It's not going to work. We're going to lose everything. Some of the artifacts, I don't know what kind of shape they are in now, but I think have a group that's willing to do the work, willing to help out. So I don't wanna, if we kibosh the program tonight, I don't know where that puts the museum. I mean, I think you have people who walk away, and people walk away, then it is closed. So that's why I'm in favor of going ahead and doing the recommendations as outlined in the motion.
Steve?
Well, certainly there's a lot of issues, with water damage here with this building, and, with not owning the building, there's some issues that, need to be, worked out for sure. I feel pressure that the opening of the museum is causing us to sort of jump to conclusions on this. The museums, we're not talking about the museum. It's a valuable asset, all of our heritage, all of our culture, all of our artifacts, all of the pride and the effort the volunteers put in here. We're not talking about that. We're talking about a building that has some structural damage and some old issues, and is not inside of our corporate ownership that we could, have confidence that the money that we're putting into it is an investment. It's like a net lease that we're just tossing our money into this. If we had lots of money that was not earmarked for other things, that would streamline the finances. But I still have difficulty on that. I think we have to have more of a conversation with the museum board of where we want to be in 10 years, 15 years, 20 years time. Because if we keep on kicking this building down, we're gonna have more repairs, obviously. A lot of foundations are notorious for issues, water cracks. You can see rows of blocks full of water here. That's why we need more repair inside for drainage trench and so on. When it comes to the sewer and water fund, that is another topic that I didn't really want to have to broach tonight, but we've had a long-term strat plan that's gone stale on us for a long time. And part of that strat plan was a commitment to do something with sewer and water in the form of village plan. And without having any kind of talk to the ratepayers about canceling that or starting to use the funds for other things, I have difficulty doing that. We're just one administration. This has been going on for, I don't know, 200 years of water issues or whatever. I don't want to be part of an administration that shorted it, took money and used it for something else. And didn't go back to people and say, look, if we're gonna cancel that part of the long-term strat plan, there's $6.7 billion of funding plus whatever the component of the public utilities is. That's a lot of money just to be floating around. That has to be a bigger conversation for sure. I don't like popping the cork on that. Once it starts to go, you know, they got some, how come we don't get some? Next thing you know, 6 months, 7 months, and we don't have any real kind of corporate policy, or worse, we haven't gone back to our rate. That's like a long-term strat plan, looking at the future 10, 15, 20 years from now, with regards to especially the sewer water situation and the need for development in the former village. There's absolutely no discrimination or no slight towards the museum or the board or the efforts or the pride that have gone on. I want to make that absolutely clear. This has to be a financial decision that we're looking at for the long-term benefit of the museum. When I look at the numbers, $210,000, you know, goes a long ways in the capital of a new project or even a new building. Not that we want to do that, but I'm just saying that's a substantial amount of repairs for a building. So, I can't support that either. I think, you know, the pressure of getting this museum open is going to have to be one of the questions that we're going to have to ask is to say, are we going to patch it and open it? You know, do some remedial repairs to make it publicly acceptable and then have a look at what we're going to go. Or talk to the board about deferring or opening and give us some time for putting this on the front burner and playing with
So there are some misconceptions. We do own the building. It's the property that it's sitting on that was given, allowed to have the museum sitting there. And the sewer and water money, I've since I'm the only one that was on council at that time, that was initially $7.25 million, which at that time was thought to be a third of the cost of the project. The company that costed out the project at 18 or so million was like half what the actual cost was. When we actually get into design and come up to 30 million without treatment, that's 15 years ago. That 30 million is probably 50 million with treatment, so there's actually probably no way the township would ever afford to put the system in. The residents would be bankrupt for the rest of their lives, because you pay, the residents pay, and it would be the village only. So, and in the meantime, some of the initial water surveys were done poorly. They weren't done sterile and whatnot, so the health unit did do a retest of all the wells in the town. There weren't near as many bad ones as was thought. I don't have the numbers here, what it was. There probably some have turned bad since that time. But that's the other side of the sewer and water. To me, it's never gonna happen because it's never, ever gonna be affordable. The idea of putting up a building of that size someplace else, you're probably talking $500,000 to $750,000. So 200,000 into this building, and as Chelsea says, she's working with the landowners, the current landowners, which probably will hold the deed. They would probably be very gracious to allow us to have the property that would be 100% our property. Because if we were to walk away, they'd be paying tax on the building then. So I'm certainly 100% in favor of it. There's a lot of rich history in that building. There's a lot of issues on the Logging Act. I don't know if everybody realizes that in 1880 something, the Rivers and Stream Act was enacted. That happened here. That was for Canada. That happened here because of the issues of the day. And that's now the Navigable Waters Act. So museums are as important cog of the community as any other part. 100% in favor of. Marina?
Thank you, Chair. I just have another question. I'm not sure if it's for Amanda or Chelsea. If we were to get confirmation from legal that we are going to own the land, would it not be our due diligence then to re-tender this entire works when we're adding another $40,000 to this one when no work has been started by a company? It's been by volunteers and staff.
Sorry, Peter?
Jean?
Sorry, I have to speak up because that's not true. So Norwood is primarily the company with staff's help that stripped those walls down to bare concrete. So they do have time invested.
I agree with that part of it, I will correct. The restoration work has not been started.
Okay.
And we are now into the Wayne project.
Sorry, can you repeat your question? I don't fully understand.
So my question is, if my concern right now is we don't own the land, I'm worried about putting in money that can turn back on us, it's not a smart financial decision. If that were to change and we could get confirmation from legal, would it not be a more respectful way of doing business to then re-tender out the entire scope of work? From the last 2 years that have been budgeted, only a very small amount of discovery work has been done. The entire restoration project has not been started.
So for the land stuff too, I just wanna clarify, I don't think we're waiting on legal, well, when our solicitor wrote back, she said, yes, I believe that's true, so that we own the building but not the land, right? So we're gonna get more details on the deed working and stuff, but if we do get that, then we have to do negotiations with the landowner. We'll probably have to do a survey, and then we'll probably have to enter, I don't know the planning stuff, but, cause just cause we did it with the Middleville Museum, it is a lengthy process. There's gonna be fees involved, like it's not gonna happen quick, it would be maybe a year, I don't know how to ballpark it, but, so that's the stuff that needs to happen. I was thinking about that, and I did go back and look at the other bids that we had. They were very, very high just on the scope of work originally. So Norwood's did come in a bunch, like a lot lower. They're still lower than the second lowest bid, I believe, with the additional work added. So when you look at it from that aspect, yes. I did do some research on like contracts, tenders, that sort of thing. So that tender, once council approves it, from my understanding, just from looking it up, and we can get more legal advice on that too, if we need to with the tender contract. But my understanding was, once the contract is approved through council, then that becomes the contract essentially.
Okay. My concern is just that last meeting, we were told that if we only do what we have budgeted for so far, then there's no point in doing anything. And so if we're going to do all of it, then I think we need to do the entire project.
I'll let Ron go first.
Okay, Ron.
Yeah, I don't think that's correct. A lot of that stuff, the HVAC, the upstairs rooms and doors, we've got away with a wheelchair ramp upstairs. We can get by with that until we apply for maybe some more funding to get that stuff. Critical is the foundation repair and the roof repair. Those are the items that should be done to move forward. And it doesn't make sense to do 2/3 and leave the other 1/3 remaining, because you're just shooting yourself in the foot. It's gonna cause you more damage, and you're right back to square one. So, I know, I get both sides of the argument. I really understand it. I really sympathize, but I think we're in peril at losing the museum if we don't move forward. And we've already voted on, I believe the last time Jeannie give us the heads up that this may entail more than what we think it was. We may discover issues here that's gonna cost us more money, so we do that going in. I also don't like to think, I don't want to cancel a tender. That's not a very good look for a municipality to all of a sudden walk away from you having a tender. They brought in material, they got it, the new part, that's something different, but the old tender, that they did it, they were pretty successful in that. They were planning on starting, and for other reasons, they weren't able to start. When it comes to masonry foundations, there's not a lot of people out there doing it right now. It's a market that has a very few players in it, and if you can get somebody that's giving you a decent price, I think it's incumbent upon us to grab it.
Steve?
Yeah, we're still back on to how we're gonna fund it regardless of what we're gonna do. And I think that great seal on that water and sewer fund for this project, there's gonna be temptation and pressure to use that money for everything but the water and sewer project. Regardless of what the future holds for that water and sewer project, where, it's bleeding financially, it's no longer affordable, the wells, whatever it is there. I'm very respectful of long-term strat plans. Those are things that we had robust consultation with our public that were put into a plan. The joint planning committee was tasked to implement. If we're gonna have movement away from one of those projects to utilize that funding, I feel that we should be going back to our ratepayers into the renewal of that long-term strat plan, and not cherry picking it for, it's very convenient to sit in there, but on the ethics of the finances, I can't authorize that for this, regardless of what we do to this place. Financing is another project that we see that hasn't been accomplished, and that had a commitment to our
Before I go to Ron, we have been borrowing the interest off of the sewer and water fund for a number of years and paying it back. I imagine that's what Ron's gonna remind us of.
Well, that was part of, what year was it we got those funds?
2008, maybe?
Was that federal and provincial both, or was it just?
Provincial.
That was just provincial. So the provincial government didn't give us money in 2007 to sit there and invest in the bank on a project that we're never going to do. I mean, it is a project, even though it benefits the whole of the Highlands, it is going to be borne, the cost is going to be borne by the members of the ratepayers that live in the village. No one else is paying for it. So, it's difficult to say see that I don't remember any strategic plan where we were talking, maybe during amalgamation, but there's a lot of things we're talking about amalgamation that never came to fruition, so, I have an issue with that. Yes, I understand your concern, Councilor Roberts' concerns about once you start tipping into it, it gets easy to start tipping into it for everything, and I understand that. But going forward, we have to make sure, but we've got to come up with another solution to water sewer, because water and sewer, as we're looking at it, and has been talked about, it's never going to happen. It's been talked about for over 100 years. So, if we need to even put it as a borrowing and figure out a way to pay it back, then we can do the borrowing part of it. I don't have an issue with that, but I don't want to see the museum fall tonight, because I know if we walk away from it, that's probably what's gonna happen.
So just quickly looking at the numbers here, if you look on page 126 of the Chelsea's report, if you look at the initial, like the top, it says foundation repair costs, and funding needed was $37,313.99. Remaining projects needed. If you just take the bare bones, what we need, which is obviously put the basement wall back together, do the roof repair and the eaves trough, taking away all the extras that time will allow us to deal with, you're only looking at $58,000. Again, I said, when you look at the original one at 210, you think, oh my God, that's unbelievable, but we are only talking about making the foundation so that it doesn't leak anymore, and we're looking at $58,000. Now, again, we will have to address the HVAC system and the wheelchair ramp, but that's down the road. To get that museum so that it's safely not leaking water, we're spending $58,000. 37 of which has already been agreed to, and so we're just looking for that little bit extra to move forward and go from there.
Nelson?
Thank you, Chair. So again, if we're going to fix the foundation though, we should also fix the water coming in through the roof.
Yes.
So
It's
not leaking right
we were
now.
advised from Councilor Kelsey.
It was, they did repair.
So it's going to, the roof is in bad repair. All I'm saying is that if we're gonna move forward and do the foundation, I feel like we should also make sure that the roof is good as well. As far as that goes. So, and I believe at the last meeting, the last report stated that a grant had been applied for. So was that just maybe grammatical error? And so I guess that was why I was asking what had been applied for, because it stated that. And, the other item is the drywall in the basement. I know that again, it had come at the last meeting saying that, so is the basement just gonna be left like cinder block walls?
So that's why I added the drywall in there.
And that's
for
in
the
there,
top.
and I included that in what I sorry.
Because Councilor Kelsel had mentioned that that's something that she believed should be added in there and that we shouldn't leave. So I added we did get a quote for the drywall to be put in, and then I think I was just gonna communicate with the museum board that they can do the painting and like the more cosmetic stuff afterwards.
Sorry, I just wanted to jump in there to answer through the chair. So there was a grant applied for, it was at the same time we applied for Middleville, we applied for a grant for the Lanark Museum. We were unsuccessful, but Middleville did get their funding. So it's not that we haven't been looking for grants, you did apply for us on our behalf, we didn't get it.
And just a quick point on that, have we ever been told, I know we've been told by the auditor that sometimes the money that we have sitting in reserves, doesn't help us when it comes to funding. Have you ever been told that, Chelsea, on a grant application?
I haven't been told that, no, but I heard it from one of our previous treasurers, so.
Yeah, so I have heard that statement before, that money actually hurts us, not helps us. We've got money sitting there that we're not utilizing, and if you apply for funding, they say, well, you got $6.7 million, address that issue, so it's time to address that moving forward.
Well, before I got Steve, another thing to be abundantly clear on, there's a signed contract, and there was no deadline to have the job done, so that means the contract is still open. If we were to say, no, we're not doing it, we'll pay for the job and not get it done. Because that's what everybody wants to happen, or not? Steve?
I don't, can you say that? I was trying to listen to you, I was thinking of what you were saying.
Yeah, so we have a signed contract with the contractor. There is no end date on it. There should have probably been an end date for completion, but there is not. So that means the contract is still fully inactive, or active, excuse me. If we were to reject it now, with a signed contract, we will pay off that contract and not get a job done. So you're gonna pay for the job and not get it done. Is that what you want?
Thank you for repeating that, I wasn't listening, sorry. I would address that, that would be our legal, department that would look at that. If, my point I was gonna take was, if we're gonna start with the sewer and water, and we're gonna call the sewer water project done, dead, then I think we should do that publicly, in a public statement, that the funds that are allocated towards that project are now no longer for that project, and that is a closed door. There was a lot of angst gone through for that, we were looking at new technologies, we were looking at lots of things, I've had lots of ideas, you know, where if you couldn't solve these problems for sewer and water, then you would offer appropriations for people so that they could get into a home that had devalued because of it. I feel for people that are in that situation, that have been in for a long time, waiting for us to do something with $7 billion. If we're not gonna do that, I think we should make a public statement that project is now defunct, and that the money would be put into our operations, and that there would be, that would be free and clear, and we could spend it as we saw fit for the projects. But until we have closure there, I'm very reluctant to do that.
Jeannie?
So I'm gonna make a suggested motion and revise it a little bit, because right now, I think, it seems like it's the deal breaker, but water and sewer, so I'm saying take that off the table. I would like to, change the motion, and that the Township of Lanark Highlands Council directs staff to proceed with the foundation repair project, and the remaining 37, or whatever that amount will be. Do we know that that is the actual amount, Chelsea? Okay.
That includes the roof?
Yes.
No. As well? No.
Okay, so that's what I'm.
Oh, sorry, I thought you meant for the foundation project.
Yeah, no, so whatever that, the exact amount is, I would like to know that. And I'd just like to take out to complete the project to be funded by water and sewer. Just take that last line out and then carry on with the rest of your motion. So we're still looking for, the next section here. Again, taking out funded by water and sewer, but still bringing back a report. And still looking into, the possibility of purchasing the land. But just taking the water and sewer out right now and just proceeding with the work that we had originally set money aside for, with the addition of costs that Chelsea's first or second report came back, looking to bump it up to finish that work. I think we need to at least do that. And then when we have our ducks in a row, we know if we own the land or we can purchase the land or what, as Bree said, have a wholesome discussion about what the cost will be, then we can decide. But I think to move this forward, we should do what we had originally agreed to in the previous council, and that's to do the repairs with the additional cost, because it was stated in the contract that there could be additional cost once they had stripped the walls to see how much damage. Once that work's done, that secures the basement. There's no water coming in. And to Allison's point about the roof, there was an issue with the roof leaking when they put the McFarland wing on, and the two joints, it was leaking in there, but that was repaired. So the water's not coming through them anymore, it's coming from the ground in. And, so, to move this forward, I think I'm hoping that, I can convince everyone to at least secure the building, and then we can have the big fulsome discussion about applying for grants, what else needs to come down, but this way we get the museum secure, we open, and go from there.
Thank you. I appreciate your work on that motion, thank you, Councilor Council. My question is, if we agree to this tonight in council, is Norwood's going to be able to complete this work before opening?
Just because it was delayed that extra 2 weeks after, like before it was guaranteed, I told him I would call him after this and he'd let me know.
So my question is then, thank you, Chelsea, we have not seen a budget, and I asked and I'm disappointed that the answer of what mitigating factors can we do to work with the museum, I would go over there and put things in Rubbermaid bins if I have to get them through this season to prevent any other damage. And then we can see budget, and then see if we're going to extend their opening anyways, then can we not defer this another few weeks and help them until we can see budget and make an appropriate financial decision? I have a hard time doing another $60,000 when we have not seen budget.
I was gonna suggest that it come out of capital reserves, it's just that you're not gonna.
And I did speak with the museum board too about opening and with Norwoods and stuff, and just saying that there might be a bit of an overlap now just with the delay. And because they're mainly open on weekends, they'll be doing the work during the week. So we were gonna come up kind of with something to just get them open while the work's being completed. We're hoping the majority of the work can be completed. We're gonna have to move the entrance to the side, but there is a way for both to be done, if that's what we're gonna end up doing.
Allison?
Thank you, Chair. So what capital reserve account, because again, we haven't seen any financials. So we know that we don't have enough in fire or public works to even do the purchases we've already approved for them. So what reserve exactly are we talking about?
Well, it's because Steve doesn't want us to use that sewer and water reserve money, that's the only reason. And we have, as I've said before, we have used the interest off it for a number of years now. And there's way more interest in there since the last time it was used to do this project twice.
So,
Allison?
thank you, Chair. So can I potentially then, Jeannie, it's your motion, that it be borrowed from water and sewer until we can see our budget and actually see what's going on?
I'd be good with that.
So technically then that motion, you could leave that in and just insert the word borrow and leave the motion as it is. Okay, I'm good with that.
Yeah, I'm 100% okay with that. Just, I wanna confirm, the 37 is just the foundation? If we're gonna borrow from the water sewer, we might as well do the roof and at least do the roof and the eaves trough.
Yeah.
When we're doing it, get that part of it done, that's your water issues, that resolves that. The inside drywall, that's cosmetic thing. HVAC, I don't believe the museum, does it have HVAC? I don't think it's HVAC is part of the building.
So HVAC is, sorry, Chair, through you, it is very important for a museum because humidity and moisture is not good for any of the items that are in there.
Yeah.
It is a very important aspect, and that's why it's there. But I think what we're looking to do right now is mitigate the water.
Yes.
And that's why I keep speaking about the roof, and I apologize if it's not currently leaking, but there were comments about it leaking, and if you drive by, you can see how bad a shape it's in. So that's why I had spoken of the roof as well. So I agree, I'd like to, what's the full number that we're saying we're gonna borrow point, so we can have discussions about it.
So the roof isn't that urgent, it could be, it's not in the part of the contract, we're only dealing with what the contract is currently, right? So that could be the roof part for budgets later on.
I'm just thinking, instead of coming back and having another 3-hour
Yeah.
session about it, if we could just maybe include it in, if we're borrowing, that we kind of include it and get that going before we have another rainstorm and we do have an issue with it, because it is in really poor condition.
Okay.
So, my understanding, through Chelsea, is that the motion would be amended to say, Township of Lanark Highlands Council directs staff to proceed with the foundation repair project, the roof repair, drywall for the basement, and eaves trough, and the remaining $59,300 to complete the project funded by borrowing from the water and sewer reserve funds. And then the rest of the motions remaining the same.
Everybody's good with that? So you ready to call the question?
Yes.
All in favor?
I'm sorry, do we have a mover and second?
Oh, so you moved it? And Ronnie seconded. And it's unanimous. So, site plan application.
Thank you, Ring. The matter that's before you is regarding, probably the last site plan application that council will ever see. As council is well aware, site plan control was removed as an item that can be dealt with by staff through Bill 23. This is a legacy file dealing with Pickle Bay Lodge on White Lake. The existing trailer park has 5 cottages, 33 trailer sites, an office, a marina, and the applicant's house. The proposal that was first presented in 2018 was to add an additional 25 trailer sites to the northeast corner of the property. It's gone through extensive review by government agencies. It's been peer reviewed by 2 engineering firms. It's been reviewed and commented on by the Ministry of Natural Resources and Forestry, the Mississippi Valley Conservation Authority, Ministry of the Environment, Conservation and Parks, and the Federal Department of Fisheries and Oceans. The last remaining item, Reeve, that we were waiting for support from was the stormwater management plan. It had been through a number of iterations, but we are now in a position where the stormwater plan has been supported. The site plan agreement that you have before you, the request is that the mayor and the clerk be authorized to execute the agreement. The agreement has in it all of the conditions established by the Ministry of the Environment regarding species at risk and from the Department of Fisheries and Oceans regarding habitat for aquatics. So there are a number of very unique conditions with the site plan agreement, but I'm pleased to say that we are in a position now that staff feel comfortable recommending this proceed. Once the agreement's executed, it then becomes registered on title and becomes binding on successive owners. Yeah, so it's in a good position. We're ready to proceed with it. So any questions, I'd be happy to answer.
Steve?
I did have a conversation with the owner of the park, and he was looking to have it deferred for a couple of weeks. There, I guess there's some other things that he was looking into. I tried to get a hold of him again this afternoon. I said I'd try to get him before it came to session, but I wasn't able to. But that's what he was left off with me, was that he would like to see it deferred for a couple
through you, Reed, I've been dealing with his agent on a daily basis, so this is the first I've heard of a request. I'm just going based on what his agent and I have been trying to work on for 4 months now, so. I've not spoken to the applicant, he hasn't contacted me, I have no knowledge of that.
Jeannie?
So how long have you, is it 4 months you've been working on this forms, or is it longer?
I've been involved with this file since we started, since I've started here, so it's over a year, but it's been active file since the new year.
I thought I had been for 2 years, I sort of remember this one. So I think, all due respect, I think we waited long enough, so, thank you.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, so this will come to council in 2 weeks' time, and if the owner wants any changes in the timeline and whatnot, it has to come to staff. But we ourselves, we bring some messages to staff, but in a situation like this, he has to, and if he hasn't went through his agent, I'm not sure what's going on there. Like, this won't change anything, this gives him approval, so I'm not sure what more he wants, if he wants to back out, or doesn't make sense. Any other questions?
I'll make a motion.
Jean's moving and Ron seconding, all in favor? Carried. Waited all that time for that. So, we're into the new and other business. There was a police service board meeting, a countywide one, right up on here someplace. Last April 26th in Drummond, North Elmsley. And the biggest thing was what's called Project Lifesaver presentation. And what it is, it's a system where they're using, Ron, you probably maybe use them still, the little antennas to find your dog that's lost in the bush. So this is exactly almost the same system. They put a bracelet on people that will have a chance of what we might call a runner, dementia patients, some kids with attention deficit disorder, all that kind of stuff. $500 for the bracelet. And I think it was something like $100 a year to change the bracelets and to change the batteries, something of that nature. So it's got a fairly substantial range, handheld. They can go out. They have 2 of them. There's one in Carlton Place, one in Perth, and they haven't used them before. They can go out, and if the person's too far away, then they can put them in the car and drive around the area and triangulate, get in, close into a closer area and whatnot. I was going to ask the question of putting them on a drone. I thought that would be really neat if they get the signal to come through the Wi-Fi with a picture and the drone. But if they get there quick enough, they can find the person in minutes instead of days. It's quite a unique little thing. You know, they said it looks pretty old, but it really works quite well. They've used them. The one chap that's involved in it said he worked on a search and rescue. I think it was a 4-day search. They found the person just 2 minutes away from the building, jammed in behind a bush next to a fence. If they had had this unit, they would have found the person in minutes. And it was kind of strange, not dealing with it, but the one chap said, basically a dementia person, when they come out the door, they go in a straight line. This is what they found over the years. I thought that's very odd, but that's what he said. I have no idea. That's exactly what he said. But typically, it's a straight line. If they can figure out the angle the person come out the door, they go in that direction, they're likely to find them. But the biggest problem is if they don't get notified soon enough. If the person's gone for too long, that's a big problem. It was just a roundtable after that. The next one is, here. Oh, it's here, July 19th, the next county meeting. So we'll have to prepare for that one. And then I'm not sure when our next police service board meeting in the township is.
June 15th, I think.
June 15th.
Next month, yeah.
So there's nothing for the joint planning board? Bill's not here for the library? The youth center?
I think we have a meeting tomorrow night.
Is there anything more to add for the museum?
No, I think we covered it off.
The Minnesota Museum,
We have a meeting tomorrow.
the Conservation Authority.
So we had a meeting yesterday, today's Tuesday. And I think at our last meeting, I updated everybody that they had notified us that the waters were gonna be receding and that everything was, against us. We got a whole bunch of rain and that changed everything. So I'm not saying anything other than we had a meeting and they discussed the water levels. And, I'll update you after the next one.
So it went up and it went back.
Yeah.
And there's a note in the back of the minutes here for the yarn card, you want to add anything to that, Steve?
No, I haven't done anything other than that, who's that again?
Yeah, they're coming up on the anniversary in a couple of years. And, Marina, the recreational advisory committee?
We have a meeting coming up next week. I just wanted to clarify something from last week. I received a couple of communications, concerning that council wanted to, get rid of Dana's, I think Lanark Village Pets now, the wonderful daycare down at the tennis courts. No one ever said that. No one has any intention of removing a thriving business. It was just my due diligence as the rep from the Recreation Advisory Committee to bring forth a concern that was brought to me from a constituent. So I just wanted to clear that up. We love all of our local businesses and, yeah, thank you.
And, municipal grants.
No report.
So I have a motion to accept the Jeannie and Marina, all in favor? Voting fire gardens, adjournment. Allison,